Hi everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, then I'm so happy to meet you. If not, then welcome back. Today we are going to be doing some terminology. So I have 10 autistic terms that I'm going to go through. I'm going to explain what they are and I'm going to break them down a little bit. Before we get into today's video, I did want to talk to you about something. I wanted to address what's going on in the Ukraine. It doesn't feel right to sit here, do a video and not mention it, not say something, not address it. So basically what I wanted to say was I've been doing a lot of reading and I've been seeing how best people can help. So I think donating to a reputable organisation is one of the best things you can do. There is UNICEF, there is the Irish Red Cross, there's also Goal. I know there are many more, but I will list a few of them in the description box down below if you can help in any way. I think also getting your news of what is happening from reliable news sources is also really important. I just wanted to mention that. As I said, it didn't feel right to sit down here and talk to you guys without mentioning it, without addressing it. I mean, it is just, it is heartbreaking, and the images we're seeing are heartbreaking, and I know that people want to help. So I know that the organisations I've mentioned are doing a lot of really good work, a lot of hard work in helping the people in the Ukraine. As I said, I will leave those names of those organisations in the description box down below if anyone can help in any way. So I just want to mention that before I get into today's video. So getting into today's video, if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, turn on your notifications bell and you will get notified each time I have a new upload. Give this video a big thumbs up if you like the sound of it, and feel free to leave a comment down below. I love to read your comments. I love to get a bit of a dialogue going. I love to hear what people think. And yeah, let's keep the conversation going. So first off, the first one I'm going to talk about is ND, neurodivergent. So under the term neurodivergent comes ASD, so autism spectrum disorder, Tourette's, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, dyslexia and ADHD. So that's what ND is, neurodivergent. Moving on then to NT is neurotypical. So neurotypical is everyone that doesn't have what I'm after listing out. So that's NT and ND, and you will see that those terms a lot within the autism community, within autism advocacy as well. So that is those two terms. Moving on to number 3, I'm going to talk about ASD or ASC. So ASD is autism spectrum disorder and ASC is autism spectrum condition. So some people don't like the word disorder, so they will perhaps say autism spectrum condition. Again, some people might not like to say condition. I know personally I will use the term ASD from time to time, but I would probably refer to myself just as autistic. I know there's probably a more medical sort of terminology, but that was my official diagnosis, was ASD. So ASD, ASC, autism spectrum disorder, autism spectrum condition, they are the same things. It's just different people might prefer to use one over the other, or mightn't use either. I might just say autistic, like what I do. Then one of the biggest ones, and you're going to hear this a lot within the autism community, is person first language and identity first language. I do think I might have touched on this before in previous videos. So person first language is if I said I have autism, Connor has autism, Jane has autism. And then identity first is saying I am autistic, Connor is autistic, Jane is autistic. By the way, Jane and Connor don't exist, I'm just using those names. And I know that within the autism community, the identity first language is generally what we prefer to use. Of course, as always, it is personal preference, and I would never say to anybody you can't use person first language but within the autism community, that is generally what we like to use ourselves, and what we also like to see other people using when they are talking about us. So moving along then, we're on to number 5, is sensory overload. This is definitely a term you are going to hear within the autism community. And that is, a sensory overload is when one sense or a combination of senses are basically overstimulated. And this could be noise, it could be taste, it could be smell. As I said, it could be a combination of more than one thing. And it's where your senses are overloaded, they're overstimulated. And this can then lead to perhaps autistic meltdown, autistic shutdown, and my next one is actually autistic meltdown. So similarly, when we talk about sensory overload, the autistic meltdown is again overstimulation, and sometimes a sensory overload can lead to your autistic meltdown. Now, one thing I want to say, this is not a tantrum. An autistic meltdown is not a tantrum. A tantrum is generally kind of something where maybe a child or person isn't getting something they want. So they want the sweets on the shelf, they're not allowed to have a tantrum. An autistic meltdown is a reaction to perhaps your environment, to something that is just too much for you, is overstimulation. And even if that stimulus is taken away, this does not necessarily mean that the meltdown is going to stop. Whereas with a tantrum, if you give the person the sweets or the money or whatever it is they want, generally that can stop the tantrum. So it is so important, the autistic meltdown, and it's so important that people recognise that a tantrum and an autistic meltdown are definitely not the same thing. So moving along then, and this is a term that people will hear, it's not something that's widely used anymore, and it is Asperger's syndrome. So this used to be an official diagnosis, but it is no longer a diagnosis, it is not part of the DSM-5. Similarly to person first language, some people would refer to themselves as having Asperger's syndrome or calling themselves an Aspie. Again, I'm not here to tell anybody that you can't use those terms, but it is something that is going out of fashion, I suppose you could say. It's not a term that's widely used. This is because, as I said, it's not in the DSM-5 anymore. It is no longer an actual diagnosis. There is certain parts of history that is also linked to the term Asperger's syndrome. I'm not going to get into that today. I might do a video another time. Also, I know from my experience, when I was diagnosed with ASD, it was after Asperger's was no longer used. But I do know that the psychologist said to me when I was diagnosed, you have ASD, but you're kind of more Asperger's, which I was like, what does that even mean? And I always thought, like, with Asperger's, number one, the sound of the word isn't the nicest thing ever. But number two, I was always like, how do you explain Asperger's as being different to autism and everything like that? So, well, I have a formal diagnosis of ASD, but I know there's some people who would have been diagnosed before me, who were diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, would no longer use that term. And within the autistic community, it's not a term that's widely used. So yeah, I want to touch on that because it is a term you will hear used a lot. Asperger's syndrome, Aspie, and yeah, I wanted you to understand that a little bit more. Moving along then to stimming. So stimming can be voluntary or involuntary, and it can come in many different forms. And this is not necessarily a negative thing. Sometimes people see that as something that should be stopped, but this is not necessarily the case. For me, stimming, childhood and even to today, probably what I would do is, if I have, like, when I was younger, I had like a pillow and I would always have it, and I would always be feeling the material like that. And even now, if I'm sitting down, materials I would kind of rub like that, and that would be how I would stim. Also, depending on emotions, if I'm really excited or really stressed, I might go on my tippy toes, which is something that can be seen in stimming in autistic people and children, and I might clap my hands, and and I might do this if I get frustrated. These are all quite common forms of stimming, but everybody is a little bit different, and they can take on different forms of stimming. As I said, it can be voluntary. It can be something you do to calm down if perhaps you're overstimulated, perhaps a little bit like a sensory overload. It's a way of calming yourself. As I said, it's not something that's negative, and it shouldn't be seen as something that's negative. It's something that autistic people do, something that I do. So yeah, that is stimming. Moving along then, at the term neurodiverse is something you are also going to hear a lot within the autistic community. So neurodiverse is how you would describe a group of people. So you would never say a person is neurodiverse because it's grammatically incorrect. So neurodiverse would be a group of people. So if you have a group of people and there's people who are autistic, there's people who have ADHD, there's neurotypical people, you would describe that group as a neurodiverse group of people. So that's where sometimes we can get a bit mixed up between neurodivergent and neurodiverse. The neurodivergent is describing an individual person who is autistic, has ADHD, Tourette's, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, dyslexia. But neurodiverse is how you would describe a group of people. So yeah. And moving along, and this is the last one I'm going to mention today, but I do think I might do a follow-up video because there is so much terminology I still haven't covered. But this is one that I really wanted to cover, and it is actually autistic, #actually autistic. So if you go onto social media like Instagram, or if you are on YouTube and you type in #actually autistic, this is where you are going to find people's stories who are actually autistic. And I think that when people want to learn more about autism, want to learn more about autistic people, or if you yourself are autistic and you want to learn more and hear other people's experiences, this is a really, really important hashtag. #actually autistic. You are going to find people's stories. You're going to find stories that you can relate to, or as I said, if you're not autistic but you just want to learn more, you want to understand, perhaps you have an autistic friend or an autistic family member, then this is one of the best ways to find information and find people's stories. Because as I always say, at the end of the day, to an autistic person is the only person who can really understand what it's like to be autistic. So yeah, that's going to be the last term I'm going to do today. As I said, there are lots more terms, so I might do a part 2 to this video. But thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I shall see you again very, very soon. Don't forget to keep the dialogue going in the comments. I'd love to hear what you all think of these terms. If you've learned anything from them, if you haven't heard of some of them before. So yeah, thank you very, very much. I shall see you all very, very soon. As always, I will leave my Instagram handle at the end of this video, so do check me out over on Instagram. I do some posts and some stories over there about autism and hidden disabilities as well. So thank you very much. I shall see you very, very soon.